This week on the Nonprofit News Feed, brought to you by Whole Whale, a B Corp digital agency focused on analytics and advertising, helping nonprofits. My name is George Weiner. I founded that thing. I enjoy talking about nonprofits and news and marketing. And I have Nick Azulay, digital strategist at Whole Whale. Nick, how's it going? What's new over there?
It's going great, George. We have a lot of whalers in New York this week, which is super exciting. So getting to see some old faces and new faces at Whole Whale. George, we have a really important promotion to announce. Our ad grant cohort is now recruiting. George, I have two facts for you. Fact number one: Google gives nonprofits $120,000 a year in-kind dollars to advertise their cause. And fact number two: too many nonprofits do not benefit from this crucial resource. If you are not taking advantage of the Google ad grant, you are leaving $120,000 on the table. George, right now we're recruiting for our ad grant cohort, in which our experts will walk you through how to make the most of the Google advertising ad grant. We've taken over 10 years of experience with our experts and have put this into a condensed, easy to accessible product, in which you'll get to live interact with our trainers, and learn how to harness the ant grant. So, George, right now, go to wholewhale.com to learn more. Wholewhale.com/Google ad grant cohort dash dash dash. Learn more. Sign up now.
I'll just add fact number 3. It is a cohort and training so valuable that my father-in-law literally told me when I told him we were doing it. He's like, "Why on earth would you do that and explain what your company does and your secrets of managing this ad grant?" I was like, "Yep." He's like, "Don't do that. That doesn't make sense." So, 100% of my father-in-laws think that this is too good to be selling. Alrighty. A strong promotion to start. All right. The 5 people that are still listening, listen up.
Strong start, and it's only downhill from here. No, I'm kidding. George, our first story we want to talk about is, I think, pulling the thread a little bit here, but in a really important way. I want to talk about political attacks and how it's kind of trickling down into the demonization of nonprofit personnel. So, George, if you open up the New York Times, I'm sure you're hearing about political and legal fights over immigration. Most notably, the Trump administration's attempts to deport Venezuelan migrants to El Salvador, where they'll be subsequently imprisoned in this legal limbo, has come under legal scrutiny. The Trump administration cites the Alien Enemies Act to deport these immigrants. However, a judge, the chief judge of the United States District Court for DC, the District of Columbia, has essentially ordered a restraining order on the government's ability to do this. That judge, James Boasberg, has subsequently experienced the ire of the conservative far right. Trump has personally attacked Boasberg, calling him, a far left radical. Republicans in Congress are trying to impeach him. And George earned the rare rebuke of the otherwise typically timid John Roberts, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. That's the backstory. That's less important. What we want to talk about, though, George, is that nonprofits, I think, are increasingly finding themselves in really tricky and precarious political situations, because Judge Boasberg's daughter has been experiencing vitriolic attacks online for working with the nonprofit Partners for Justice. The nonprofit provides support to individuals facing criminal charges. They work with public defenders, and they've strongly advocated against using the Alien Enemies Act to deport immigrants, right? They've also opposed other legislation like the Laken Riley Act. George, in our newsletter, we did not publish the name of Judge Boasberg's daughter. She's not a public figure. This ire is quite frankly harassment on borderline doxing, and she's been directly called out by figures such as Elon Musk and Donald Trump Jr. George, this is not the only nonprofit organization that I think is finding themselves in really tense political standoffs. Anecdotally, I can say that nonprofits have started to take down or otherwise kind of hide their staff pages, right? There's a I think a growing kind of trend of concern about kind of politically extremist rhetoric impacting the work of otherwise, non-public figures in the nonprofit sector. George, I also wanted to cite a story from last summer. Catholic Charities in San Diego actually had to hire private guards for their facilities because of far right kind of mobilization against their working with immigrants. So, George, I think a lot of nonprofits working on really contentious, hot button political issues, in addition to kind of the legal ramifications of the executive orders, et cetera, are finding themselves at the center of really hot political discourse that I think is causing quite a lot of concern.
Yeah, I think nonprofits find themselves as the lightning rod that the administration is using to persecute their political adversaries, literally as a nonprofit progressive scare. And that echoes back to the Red Scare, that reaching its peak in the 1950s, our fear of communism, our fear of Russia, also manifested internally as basically naming and blaming and finding false allegations anywhere you wanted against anyone, even associated with associating with 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, who in this case represents a communist plant designed to cause revolution in our country. So we are seeing this repeated. Like I'm surprised he just doesn't even change the name, just call it the, progressive Red Scare, using and weaponizing this. And unfortunately, it looks like progressive nonprofits are that vector, are that guilt by association to their political enemy. And this type of you are related, ergo you are guilty. By the way, you weren't guilty to begin with, and in and of anything is it's a scary leap. But this is, review the history of the Red Scare, and this is what is happening. This is literally what that was.
Yeah, George. And I think ideologically, it follows the same logic behind the nonprofit law that we were discussing, the proposed legislation back in December, which would allow the Treasury Department to strip nonprofits of their 501c3 status if they, quote, engage in terrorist activity. And that same logic, that rhetoric of we're in a national emergency, therefore the government can do anything, is the same logic they're using to attack immigrants, attack nonprofits, etc. So I think we need to be really vigilant in understanding that is the positionality of a government intent on basically halting any threats to their administration or policies. All right, George, I want to take us into our next one. And this was a piece that you wrote up, and we cite a lot of interesting sources, most notably a great piece from NPR about the corporate history of plastic recycling in the United States. George, I'm one of those people who, my girlfriend and I, we love recycling. We divvy it all out. We have our plastics, our paper, our glass. We're very diligent about it, and we think this is good for the environment. But George, have I been fed some kind of narrative that kind of obfuscates what's really happening in big recycling? Is this just greenwashing? What's going on here?
Yeah, I'm glad you used the term greenwashing, because based on, looking this up, I've really been questioning and trying to pull back, like, how did we get here? How did we get here? And what lessons can I learn so that I can basically build up that muscle of understanding when, frankly, we're being lied to, when we are being tricked. And in this case, the fact that 9% or less of plastic is actually recycled in the US, yet we have this entire mechanism around it. If you really pull back and you go back, you realize that nonprofits like Keep America Beautiful, completely funded by the plastic industry back in the 90s, really were this origin of, no, plastics are polluting. How do we push the responsibility onto the people? This is just a reprise of, guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's your fault, public. You didn't clean up. You didn't clean up our mess. You didn't eat it for the secondary and tertiary impacts of producing a product that ruins the environment. And it's just quite remarkable to look at that evolution still playing out today, where we're doing something that is costly, ridiculous, and not helping the environment in any way. It is a downstream ineffectual way to deal with this major problem. And all we keep doing is kicking the can. The amount of plastic produced every year goes up in like orders of tonnage every year. Number go up. And no amount of recycling is going to fix that. And it's just like one of these like things that like I'm a father. And when my kids eventually ask me, he's like, didn't you know that was real stupid, Dad? I'll be like, yeah, but we recycled. Stop it. It's a band-aid. And this type of solution, is now I am watching it because I'm very curious how these industries fund, mislabel, misrepresent, and push it to the people. The fact that it's your fault that when you are drinking from a plastic bottle right now, it's your fault that there's microplastics in it. You have to take responsibility for your body. And by the way, microplastics in moderation is the way. By the way, it's a plant-based plastic, so it's different. Like, there's going to be some BS narrative that's got to be funded and pushed out on us so that they can continue business as usual, poisoning the environment and poisoning our bodies. It's just like incredible to watch and be like, I can see what's going to happen. That is what is going to happen. Some group like Keep America Healthy is going to be created and funded by the plastic industry. Literally throughout the 90s, 50 million a year was spent on ads like the Crying Indian commercial that shifted blame to consumers. P.S. It was an Italian actor used to push responsibility of corporate waste onto the public. And so in the back of your mind, just watch. It's coming. It's coming in some form. When you look at the historical narrative, you're like, people don't change the tactics. It's the same thing. It's the Red Scare again. It is the pushing the responsibility on the people based on the pollution caused by the corporations and tricking us into that blue recycling bin actually solving a macro problem. It's not. So I encourage nonprofits to look at the downstream effects, to look at how their solutions are maybe anchoring to the true causes, because I think right now we need more mergers in the nonprofit sector. We need a more critical eye toward how especially progressive nonprofits work together at the root causes of what's going on, rather than just playing let's go recycle the bottle downstream.
George, I think that was such a brilliant analysis. And I can add that I'm not an expert in kind of environmental justice, but I study human rights. And we see very similar things here in which we have a capitalist appropriation of rights language, particularly when it comes to things such as like humane manufacturing, et cetera, that in a way just kind of sells to you this rhetoric and places the responsibility on you to pay higher prices, when usually that clothing is no more humane or less humane than the average garment you get from wherever, right? So I think you can take this argument and you can extrapolate it into a lot of different sectors. So just a really great framing, as I think we're in this juncture now in which so many institutions were thinking about kind of like reimagining. When everything's crumbling, I think we tend to reimagine in big ways. So I appreciate this story. All right, George, this is kind of an interesting one. We don't have to spend too much time on it. It comes from Fortune, and they interviewed a CTO at a company called Ministry Brands. They seem to provide management software, particularly to faith-based organizations and nonprofits. I think primarily in the church and faith and religious organization space, but they manage 6.5 billion in annual donations. And George, I think it's really interesting here because in this interview, they are going all out on AI. A subscription-based AI model, it seems to be what they're adopting. It's automating accounting, marketing materials, donor outreach. They are really moving into kind of the nth degree of AI. And George, I wonder if you just have reactions to this.
I think at one level is that we're beginning to see the nicheification of AI into practical use cases, not the blank slate, hey, ask whatever you want of a general ChatGPT. It is the application of AI in the backyard with that purpose, that regulated and regular data source that is relevant to your audience in execution. And I think there's a lot of opportunity to look in your backyard, look in your niche and be like, all right, how do we bring this to the last mile rather than saying, just use ChatGPT? It's the similar saying as like, hey, just Google it. And you're like, that didn't give me the answer. They didn't like finish it. So I think there's a lot of opportunity applications there. And the other is, I think, in conversations I've had with folks in the fields of religion, ministry, AI is a threat. actually, because of its ability to churn out that type of biblical content informed with daily references to modern life. Like that kind of association and fictional narrative of like bringing and merging the Bible with those other narratives is made much easier. Plus the rise of mega churches and mega religious personalities inside of that ecosystem is drawing attention away from the local. And when you've got the like, don't show up, on Sunday in person when you can just put on the channel, that is increasingly part of business happening. So for smaller churches, there's a lot of uphill climb happening right now. And I think AI is like accelerating it. And like with a tool like that for a large group, like it will amplify their ability to churn out phenomenal amounts of content.
Yeah, George,
In
I have to
volume, not
agree with you.
necessarily quality. Phenomenal as a measure of largesse, not qualityness.
Right. There's a level of proximity and intimacy and authenticity that is required in faith. I don't think AI can give that, but it might be able to get you pretty close, at least in terms of content. So interesting to see how this evolves in that space. All right, George, I have a feel good story for you.
What do you got?
This comes from ABC7, and it is about a nonprofit in Livingston, New Jersey. And essentially, they provide a fully functional indoor town for kids with disabilities to interact and learn about the dailies of adult life. There's a bank, there's 15 fully functional stores in this kind of like, I think like small sized, easy to access little town for kids, particularly young. It helps build social and emotional learning skills. And yeah, just cool to see kind of innovative projects like this serving the community. George, this is not far from where I grew up in New Jersey for most of my elementary school years. So yeah, really, really cool to see.
Yeah, I wonder if they're teaching any real world lessons. Like if they, overdraw their bank account by $2, they get charged $35. I'd have a dark side of town that's like, this is this is how you're learning.
Yeah. And then it actually changed because now they're trying to get rid of all those overdraft regulations. So, all right, George, I think we need a joke.
What do you got?
What did the nonprofit say when all their donor goals came through on April 1st?
Boy, what did they say?
We're fully funded now.
Oh,
Fooled you.
happy April. Yeah, you
Happy April Fool's,
fooled you.
George.
Thought it was going to be funny. Gotcha. Fully funded. All right. Happy April. We made it, everyone.
We made it to April. Happy April. See you, George.
See ya.